Hello, everyone. From Samson to Kanye West, we have brought together the list of ranking people as overrated and underrated all throughout history. Now, this is our list. We each chose around 10 people. So, this list gets into some crazy characters that have no connection with one another. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. We are Some Irritating Male Podcast, all otherwise known as Simp. I am one of the hosts. My name is Jacob, and I like baseball. And we have my fellow host, Paxton and Josh. Paxton, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. It's so good to be here. My name is Paxton Price, and one fun fact about me is I like rock climbing.
Hello, folks. It's an absolute pleasure to go on this historical expedition with you all. And my name is Josh. One thing that is unique about me, I like mushrooms, specifically eating them, the edible
All right,
ones.
we're gonna cut Josh off right there.
Yeah.
We
Understandable.
could do another episode on mushrooms.
Yeah,
at
we're
some
getting
point.
a word from our producer to just cut
Yeah,
off.
we gotta shut it off. If we go down that rabbit hole, this will be a brand new
A
episode.
whole episode.
Yeah,
Understandable.
so we'll get there eventually, Josh. We
We've
do like to
already got
talk about
complaints about being too long, so
kind of our goal is to talk about what we're passionate about. So rest assured, there will be a mushroom related episode at some point. But
without a
that
doubt.
day is
Without a
not
doubt.
today. Today, we delve into the depths of history. And without further
Going way
ado,
back.
if you guys are ready, I will share my screen and we will open up this tier list. We have 3 categories: overrated, underrated, and then in the middle, we have based. And basically what this is we're looking at kind of the general perception of these characters. So if we agree with the general perception, it's obviously a based perspective.
Mm-hmm.
All
That's
right.
a bit of a switcher from the last episode. So we're out with the old of properly rated and with the new base.
Based. I like
Onward
that.
and upward.
Yeah.
Continue to
Upward.
improve.
All right, we got the
Pretty
full screen.
solid list.
Okay. And basically I mixed up all of the characters, so it will just, if you put one of these characters down, when we come to that person, you'll do the opening kind of little brief conversation about whether they're overrated or underrated. All right, so first off, we have William Wallace. So we're not doing Mel Gibson, Braveheart's version, but we're doing William Wallace himself as the character in history. I just liked this image of Mel Gibson as William Wallace. Josh, Paxton, have you guys seen the movie?
No,
I have not.
Okay. Do you know anything about William Wallace?
I'll be honest, I do not.
I did a little bit of research on all of your characters like a couple hours ago. I think he was a Scottish knight in 1300 or something. That's all I know.
Yeah, and so this is when England or the British, I don't know even what they were referred to back then, had control over this territory. And so there was a lot of the just Scottish people who wanted liberation from that rule and wanted freedom. And a lot of that is what the movie Braveheart is about. It's about William Wallace kind of leading the charge and getting people to rebel against the English rule. But one of the things that's been coming out a lot lately, and this pick was suggested by a friend of mine, and I said, give me one person throughout history who we should talk about. And he said William Wallace. And then he went off telling me, so this is not one that I know a lot about. I know a little bit. I read a book about him once, but it was a while ago. But a lot of what's coming out nowadays is that William Wallace himself was not as instrumental to Scotland's freedom against the English rule. It was actually Robert Bruce. I don't know how you're supposed to say that, but he was kind of the de facto ruler of the Scots at the time, but obviously he was under the English rule as well. But I think a lot of attention got put on William Wallace, one, because of this movie Braveheart, and then two, because he had a very notable death in which his body was cut up into many different pieces and like placed, I think all cardinal directions, like north, south, east, and west, in certain cities, basically as a warning and a deterrent to people to try to like rebel against the English rule. So very, very notable, one of the more notable deaths, I think, in history. But the big thing with him is that it was actually really Robert the Bruce who was the more instrumental character in their freedom. But William Wallace just got a movie after him. So with that, I would
Interesting.
say views are changing, but I would say he's probably overrated
Mhm.
just for that.
Yeah,
But
the
it's
way
kind of
you
one of those
explained it.
things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Seems
Solid
overrated.
argument.
Yeah.
All right.
Given what you said, yeah, I agree.
Overrated. There we go. Okay, Paxton, I believe this is yours.
Yes, this is popular EDM artist Avicii. A little bit on Avicii. One of his biggest popular hits is going to be songs like Wake Me Up, Hey Brother, and Waiting for Love. He died back in 2018 due to suicide. He's one of the most instrumental EDM artists there is. I believe, Josh, who are you both fans of Avicii?
I'm a
Or
big Avicii fan. Yep.
I'm probably not as big as either one of you, but I think his music is great.
yeah, I think actually Josh is probably a bigger fan than me, so maybe you can tell me a little bit more about him.
Let's see. Well, I think I started listening to him in around 2015, 2016. My favorite song from his was it goes like, "Hey, sometimes I got a good feeling." That one. Is that a
Yeah,
Hey, sometimes I get a good feeling.
that one?
I forget what the name of it is, but yeah,
Yeah, I don't remember the name either, but there was a lot of
I
good
get a
remixes.
feeling.
Exactly, Jacob.
yeah. Just keep going. Just keep going.
I think his songs are very, very popular, like probably on the
Oh
order of
yes,
hundreds of millions of views, right?
yeah. He has to be up there with the most top three most well known EDM artists, if not. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
who else you got? Yeah, like Marshmello. I don't really know. He might be number one. I wouldn't be surprised at
Alan
all.
Walker, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, but yeah, he's probably up there.
But yeah, he's definitely top five, 100%.
I feel like I love him. I love him as I mean, he was a great guy overall. He struggled with a lot of mental health stuff. Um, I would say he's losing a little bit of his relevance, and I find that a little sad. But it's kind of due to just time, and I think a lot of his songs are timeless. I would say he gets a lot of the credit he's due, and so I would say properly rated.
I'd say
I would say,
based. Yeah.
yeah. Sorry, based. Man, I'm not with
Based.
formula.
Yeah.
Whoa, based. Yeah, he's a based. Great guy.
Avicii is based. It is official.
Our
Truly.
our very first.
Stamped approved by
It's
Simp.
true. All right. Now diving back into the very beginning of the United States of America, we have one of the founders, George Washington himself.
That's right. I put this guy in, and well, this is the first president of the United States.
This random guy.
Yes. George, the guy, what? He's on the $1 bill.
You're just like, this is my great grandfather.
Somebody should have tried to pass off one of these characters as just their relative.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Or just
their
threw
family.
your grandfather in there.
Just
That'd be
randomly.
hilarious. Right. So yeah, this guy. Lots of people would say, between Lincoln and Washington, those two contend for the best president of all time. But when you think about what was actually done to, I suppose, like liberate. No, hold up. Well, okay, so he was definitely instrumental in winning a bunch of wars that were very important in the beginning of the foundation of America, and also what's something that's not very known and what's pretty popular these days is that he's owned some slaves and that he's
Yeah, I was
actually
gonna say.
actually
He's gained a lot of like
Mhm.
negative opinion.
that's right.
A lot
in
of
recent
flack.
days.
A lot of flack.
Which is crucial because this entire podcast is based on how we differ from public opinion. So, I think in general it's a bad public opinion nowadays. And
Mm.
granted, apparently he did put some slave teeth in his mouth, like he had what's it called, teeth transplants or whatever, which is interesting among cows and
I forget what that was
horses.
called. Yeah, he had to eat a lot of I forget what the name of it is, but he had to eat a lot of tripe.
Interesting.
If
Didn't
you
know
know what that is.
No.
It's like a really long worm, and he had to eat a lot of it.
Ew. Okay.
Yeah.
But his accomplishments must be respected, and so I would argue he's underrated in this modern age.
Oh, I don't know. Here's my take.
Sure.
I think he was an amazing general, but I think he's an overrated president. He just didn't. I mean, besides keeping the nation unified, like every other president after him, he didn't do a whole lot in his presidency. Like he was a strong leader, but as far as like pushing the nation forward.
Here's a crucial thing I forgot to mention in direct opposition to your statement, Pax. I think George Washington was the only example, maybe in all of history, of a leader who voluntarily stepped down from power due to recognizing the fact that his office would only last if the country lasted itself, and to maintain that power and pass it on, he needed to constrain it into a specific time block. So he was the one who actually introduced 4-year terms for presidents, and that's completely unheard of. It's a completely new idea. So I got to give props to that.
That is pretty cool.
This one is really hard because this is a polarizing figure, especially in modern day right now. So you either hate him or you're defending him, right? So all the negative views about him coming out are causing some people to be more vitriol in their support, or more maybe just extreme in their support of him. So I feel like it's really hard to assess where the public view is on George Washington, but I also don't think he's based, because I think he's either overrated or underrated. I think he might be in current day underrated as a leader and as what he did, like his just accomplishment based. He's underrated because it's getting overshadowed, but maybe overrated as a person, because he shouldn't be idolized. He wasn't the perfect person. He made mistakes. He probably did some really bad things. But so overall, I would vote for underrated, probably because he's getting more hate now. And I would prefer that when we look at people in the history, that, I don't know, like, I think people idolize other people way too much. And so it's like, and this, I'm going to go a little longer with this argument because it will apply to other people that we come down to when we get to them, is that I don't think like some of what's happening now, where we're looking at historical figures and saying, okay, they actually were kind of bad, kind of sucky. My view is like, well, yeah, I agree. Like most people, if you dig into their lives and get to know them, there's going to be a lot of skeletons there. There's going to be a lot of negative things. There's going to be a lot of bad things. But just like their good things shouldn't have ever made them an idol in our mind and made them like the pinnacle of what somebody should be, we also shouldn't, when we hear the negative things, make them like the devil. Like, this is the worst person in history. So that said, I think because of all the hate, I would say George Washington underrated, because we're losing sight of talking about what things he actually did do that were positive.
I'm gonna mix things up and just go overrated, because I think he was overrated as a president. I don't think he's the second best president ever.
Really? We got to do a president's list next time. But
Yeah,
I'm interested. I'm interested what you think, Pax. But okay, cool.
You're still going underrated, right?
I'm still underrated. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Okay, who is this beautiful lady?
Well, I put Queen Elizabeth, and unfortunately, I'm a little ignorant as to her actual accomplishments. Hopefully you two have a better idea. But I do know. I mean, she's held power for what, like 50 plus years in Britain. She's been around, seen a lot of historical figures pass, and has kept England and running smoothly. Yep.
I feel like, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know a whole lot about her. I have some friends over there in the UK, but it seems like she was just so well beloved. It seemed like she was very beloved, and and kind of had that bringing people together type of power, if you would say. But other than that, I too don't know about specifics of what she did.
I know.
I mean, it's the UK, so I just don't care about what happens over there in general.
That's true.
Whoa.
It's the most uninteresting part of the world.
I can't get on that. Just go have one of their breakfasts, and if you don't believe us, just go have one.
Yeah, just
beans on toast.
Black pudding.
We could do a whole episode on just bashing the British.
I know that Queen Elizabeth was very devoted to her work and to her job for an extensive amount of time, extremely devoted down to the very minute details of her life, and she didn't take her role lightly at all. And so I find that respectable.
I think probably out of everything over there, she's probably one of the positive things. So
I would go based.
I would say based. I think the Queen is based.
I think the Queen's based.
The queen is based.
I feel
There
like
it is.
I feel like that'd be so rude to put her in overrated. I don't know
Yeah.
why.
True.
Yeah, we couldn't do it. We couldn't bring ourselves to do it.
So
Long
this.
live the. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah. Okay. So next one we have King Arthur, and again, not very knowledgeable about this person except
Gosh, why are you choosing people that you don't know anything about?
well, I'm
I
very
mean, I did
interested to
that
hear what you
too.
guys have to think too, but I do know a little bit. Like I know King
Mhm.
Arthur was around in the time of knights and um is often part of like fantasy stories like medieval times, and there's a whole vibe of chivalry going on with King Arthur, and it's just I don't I don't know what else, but I think popular conception is that King Arthur is just an upstanding, noble, perfect ideal that knights would want to live up to, and so that's it's an interesting thing to discuss.
Yeah. I mean, this is an interesting one because he's one of the characters that probably has near the most stories branching off of, I think, very little historical knowledge. Because I think so, there was a historical person that this character is based off of in all
Mhm.
these stories, but I feel like at least when I was in school, when I was learning about King Arthur and some of these
Mm.
people on this list, um, I feel like there was very, very little historical information about him, and there was controversy
I
over who
have
he was.
I have an interesting point on that. According to facts.net,
Oh, geez.
historians have never quite agreed on Arthur's origins. Some claim that he was a genuine historical figure, and others believe that he's just a legend, created from various stories and heroes that came before. Despite his fame, there's actually very little evidence to suggest that King Arthur really existed. So this might be a fraud against this whole
Right.
tier
Wow.
list.
So my general opinion is he was a historical figure, but there is a good chance that, well, my opinion is that the character of King Arthur is based on a historical figure, that there was some sort of root in history, whether or not that was a tale that somebody originally made up, but it was based on somebody they knew, right?
Mhm.
So if I'm telling a story, and I want to dress it up a little bit, I might tell a story that has a lot of fictional elements in it about how amazing of a rock climber this friend of mine is, and it's based on Paxton, but he's actually not as good as I'm making him sound out to be, right? I'm talking him up
Yeah.
based on a certain event because I'm kind of creating a character based off of him and based off of one, moment we had climbing some of the mountains here in Washington. So then all of a sudden that somebody else hears that story and they hear from somebody else that no, that can't be real. But then they find out from somebody else, no, I think that guy actually existed. Like Jacob does have a friend who's a rock climber, right? So you can do that. So I feel like probably it was based in some sort of historical fact, but how much we know very, very little.
I would
Um,
say just because he's had one too many movies for my take, overrated.
Hmm.
That's my vote. Overrated.
Josh,
I
It,
might
it,
go
it
overrated too because we never. I don't know. I just don't hear a lot about what he's done in
all
the
yeah,
right,
stories. It's
get him
just
in there.
overrated. The guy of many stories but little achievement.
exactly.
King Arthur,
Who might not be real?
overrated.
Who might not be real? Probably not real.
Also, he's over there in that Europe country, so a lot of
That's
stuff over
true.
there is overrated.
Do you agree
Off,
overrated as well, Jacob?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say so. I don't have a very strong opinion, but
Mhm.
all right, now we move on to Stephen Hawking, who died a few years ago. I believe it was 2018 when he passed away. But you guys know who this is, right?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Do you guys know what Stephen Hawking is famous for?
Something with black holes,
Yeah.
Hmm.
I believe.
Yeah. So there is a thing in physics called Hawking radiation, which is basically the radiation that comes off of a black hole, right there at the event horizon. So he did a lot of work with that, and he kind of came up with the idea that black holes are radiating energy, whereas everybody else before that was like, no, a black hole sucks everything in, right? Well, there are reactions that are happening from a black hole, and radiation comes off of that. But he's kind of hailed as the greatest scientist of our time. So like the modern age. That's kind of like one of the big views that after Einstein in the early 1900s, now you have Stephen Hawking in the late 1900s and early 2000s, right? That's I think it might have been like late 70s when he actually became famous, 80s maybe, and started garnering a lot of fame. Um, I went back and forth over whether or not he's overrated and underrated.
Well, this might change your mind. I have a fun fact about Stephen
Okay.
Hawking. When Stephen Hawking was 21, he was diagnosed with motor neuron disease and told he was only had 2 years to live at age 21, and he proved that quite wrong.
Mm.
And
Yeah, so
he battled this for quite a few decades.
Yeah, so what he has is ALS, and or at least a version of it. Because like you said, he was quoted 2 years to live, and then he lived way, way, way past that. So that is one thing
I like
about
that
him.
about him. Like, he was very smart, and he was still like battling through all this, and that
He
shows.
overcame a lot.
Yeah.
He had a somewhat tumultuous personal life. I don't want to get into that too much, but and then there's a movie that goes over it, The Theory of Everything,
Really?
which was a good
Okay.
movie. Yeah, it goes over kind of his fame and his life specifically, more than kind of the science. I think what he accomplished, considering what happened to him, is incredible. And then also another positive thing about him is he was one of the few people who was very distinguished in the field of science, but also a good and powerful communicator to the masses about science. So he had advanced like public knowledge of science. So like A Brief History of Time was his first book that just went viral, as we would say. Um, I think as far as like my only hesitation is if we're thinking about like geniuses of the modern era, like I feel like there are other people that I would put higher accolades on than Stephen Hawking. If we talk about like what his contributions to science have done practically in the world, I don't know. I can't think of any like major. So he's helped us a lot understand cosmology and the universe, and the Big Bang and all those parts of science. But it's like, okay, what usefulness has that given us? Like when Einstein and Niels Bohr, and we'll talk about these people, when they came up with things like quantum mechanics and even relativity, like these things were revolutionary and even,
Practical, right?
practical and necessary for the very smartphones that we use every single day. So their understanding of these things led to significant progress in just humanity and the tools that we use. Whereas I don't know if anything Stephen Hawking came up with has helped. Now maybe it could help if we do more with black holes in the future. I know some like labs work on like mini black holes that form, so I don't know if there's been any sort of like practical use of that and whether Hawking's theories come in.
I can speak to that a
Um,
little bit.
yeah.
I think I recently saw a video that due to his equations, people were able to theorize that you could reproduce the information and or the entropy that was lost when something was lost to a black hole. So you could kind of like reconstruct the
Mm.
past based on the radiation that is emitted from the black hole. So
Mm.
that's a way to, I guess, research what happened in the past.
That's funny too, because Hawking was a proponent of that information is lost inside of a black hole.
Hmm.
So he himself as an individual probably would have disagreed with that practical application. But he was a scientist that didn't care about being wrong, which I will give him credit for that. So he wouldn't be like upset that he was wrong about a certain
He
theory.
didn't have an
He just
ego.
he didn't have he has an ego, but he doesn't have an ego within the scientific
And logic.
community of his ideas. I think he got a little bit of an ego of his just kind of fame in the general public's eyes. But when it came to the scientific community and scientific ideas, I feel like he still cared more about the idea and the science than whether
I
or not
would
he was right.
I would say based. I feel like he gets the
I think
credit.
he's based. Yeah.
Yeah, for the credit whatever he did,
I'll go based.
The more I think about it, at first I was going to put him on overrated just because I thought people thought of him as like a god, and I didn't view his actual science. Like, I put Einstein actually way above him when it
Mhm.
comes to, but we'll get to that later. All right, who is this?
So I put Euler. Oh, sorry, no, not Euler. I was thinking of
Eeyore?
Euler.
Euler?
I said Euler, like Leonard Euler.
Ferris
But
Bueller?
no. He's not on the list. I was thinking about him though. But Socrates, is this person, and he's a famous one, arguably the first philosopher.
Mhm.
This guy's credited for. Why do I keep saying this guy? Socrates is credited for the Socratic method, where you just ask people questions and try and understand where they're coming from by asking a bunch of questions, which makes them question whether what they know is actually the case. Um, and he's written a bunch of books. Just a very prolific author. Um, that's just what
Well,
that's just trivial knowledge. So,
let me give you a fun fact about Socrates.
sure.
He died of hemlock poisoning. His friends wanted to bribe the guards so that Socrates could escape his death. He was sentenced to hemlock poisoning, but he said it showed that he was afraid of death and he would not. And he wouldn't be a real philosopher if he escaped. So basically, they had a way for him to escape. I
Well,
assume he was sentenced to death for something.
yeah. So I can speak to that
By the sound
actually.
of it. Okay.
He literally was sentenced to death for causing public disruptions or something he was just
Let's
asking people
go.
so many he's asking so many people so many questions, and they were getting so angry at him because people felt attacked by all the questions they were being asked, and like this guy was just an annoyance. He's just like that guy is like, actually, is that really true?
The
And
first troll. No.
exactly, he was literally a social reject, and people were just like, I can't have this guy anymore. Just off with his head.
Well, here's a fact that might turn your opinion the other way.
Yeah.
According to history, he was openly bisexual, and he was married to a woman, and often bragged.
Huge.
He often bragged that he was also attracted to younger boys.
Oh no. Oh no. Okay.
You deal with that.
Pedophilia, he is overrated. Any notion of pedophilia, he is
This
overrated.
this is according to
Sorry, Josh.
history.com.
My lawyers have
overruling
advised me to place him in overrated.
Just gotta
We can't have any of that.
That was a fun fact about Socrates.
Thanks.
We've got a
Pax.
standard here.
Thanks, Pax.
No problem. No
I was
problem.
gonna mention the
man.
Epstein Island hawking thing, but never mind.
Socrates would have been on it.
Yes,
Yeah.
Socrates is on the Epstein
Yeah,
Islands.
you know what? We have a P rule in this podcast, and if the P rule is true for any person, it's just
Overrated.
immediately overrated.
That's right.
Just get
No
him
question.
out. Get him out.
That was fun.
All right.
Next, we have popular animal enthusiast Steve Irwin. He was well known for his enthusiasm about talking about nature and animals and trying to preserve areas of the forest, as one of his biggest foundations was trying to preserve and keep people from building on certain areas of the forest. I think mostly in the rainforest. He was popular with a lot of children, and I believe this was the 90s.
Was it the rainforest? I mean, so he's from Australia, so I don't know, but
Maybe I might be getting the facts confused.
I mean, he
But
could have. He was all over the place.
let's see. He died at the age in 2006. It doesn't say his age, but to being stung by a stingray while he was trying to film a video. Tragic way he died. It wasn't instant death, but it did eventually take his life. I believe everyone highly remembers this guy in a very fond manner. I don't think he ever did anything ever in his public career that brought any negative attention to him whatsoever. He is looked at very fondly. I never, as a kid, I was not.
Really?
No, I never watched Steve Irwin.
Mm.
But I know a lot of people really like him.
So
But
one of the things about him that he was known for was even when he would be like actually in a potentially dangerous situation with like a crocodile or an alligator or something like that, he always was upbeat and like positive and just kind of nonchalant about dangerous situations. And so he just had this attitude that was so lovable. And like, I don't know if there's a clip of him, maybe there is, of him ever getting angry or upset, but just somebody who's just like always, there's always just an aura of joy around him and what he's doing and in the animals, and he never no matter how dangerous it was, showed that there was any real fear in his eyes of what he was doing. Even though I would say practically he probably knew the dangers and the fears, but he just had so much joy about what he
I
did.
I can really respect people who have a lot of visible passion for their work, and I think he emanated that better than
Yeah.
most
Yeah,
people.
his
So,
enthusiasm was contagious, and yeah,
but
go ahead.
for my opinion, I wouldn't say he's overrated because I believe everyone who has any interaction or any thoughts about him is extremely positive. So I
I
would put him in based.
I think he's based. I think he's based.
I would agree.
Yeah, he's
Everyone loves Steve Irwin.
everyone loves him, and I think he deserves the love. So
Mhm.
So next we have Rene Descartes. He's I think he was
philosopher.
yes, he was like a 1600s rationalist, I think. And he's credited with the phrase "I think, therefore I am." I think I learned in high school that's actually not the right translation, and it goes a little deeper than that. It's a little longer, but he basically, I think if I remember correctly, he was trying to find a way to use reason alone to deduce that God exists, and this was in contr like in contrast to the current social climate or religious climate where I think he was in Catholicism. I'm not sure. But also he did a bunch of mathematics, which is really cool and unheard of. This is a really cool trivia fact. The Cartesian coordinate plane, the XY plane, comes after Descartes. Like that's what it's named after. And so I think he may be one of the first people to formally visualize, like create a way to visualize functions. So that's really massive, I would say. I think people who are logical are cool. I would say I like this guy a lot. What do you guys think?
Mm.
I'm gonna
Well,
say some negative things about him,
Sure.
I'm
but
gonna
Paxton can
I'm gonna
give
give
the
a fun fact.
facts.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a fun fact about Tim real quick. Apparently, in a letter he wrote to Queen Christina of Sweden, he describes liking girls who are cross-eyed, and he had a thing for cross-eyed girls. So
Okay.
do
Wait,
with that what you want.
like girls or women?
Oh, I assume
Yeah.
it's women. Yeah,
Okay.
because
Okay.
women of my own age who are cross-eyed.
There we go. Okay. Very important.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Saved. The rule of P
Apparently,
almost got you.
apparently, that was his
Um,
fetish was cross-eyed women.
so
Interesting.
one of the things about him, to my knowledge, is he was actually instrumental in a lot of like modern thinking and especially like higher criticism when it came to the Bible. Um, so he was really big on, I think one of his theories and ideas about God and about men is that our minds are actually like he elevated our minds to was it just our minds or an intuition to basically be perfect because we're made in the image of God, so that our understanding and knowledge reflects the understanding and knowledge of God, which he wouldn't want to corrupt because he's an unchangeable God. And he had, I'm butchering it, but he had this idea where he was basically trying to create that understanding and knowledge and logic starts with the human mind, and we can know it's true and without error because it comes from a God who is true and without error. But the problem of that cycle is then we actually can elevate our understanding and knowledge above God's, and then we're like, okay, well, and it could just I guess, over emphasize and put on a pedestal the logic and knowledge of a human being and their ability to understand, their ability to not forget, to be some almost infallible. um I don't think I fully represented that, but I know those are kind of some of the ideas and kind of some of the negatives that came from his views and came from some of his argumentation. So
I would
I
say
I
underrated.
I say overrated. I feel like Josh thinks underrated, but
I would go based. I think he's based.
okay.
Oh, I said wait. That
What
means it's based.
you said
Who's the
underrated,
character?
Pax?
Yeah.
It's because of the cross-eyed thing, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. I think he's overrated.
All
All
right.
right.
Next, we have popular YouTuber from Sweden, PewDiePie. I actually don't know a whole lot about PewDiePie. I'm gonna be honest, I never watched him consistently, but I put him on this list because he is obviously one of the most
I feel like you know a lot about him.
I know a good amount. The only time I was really into PewDiePie when he was racing T Series to 100 million,
Yes.
and that was really fun. But I watched that mostly through the eyes of Mr. Beast when Mr. Beast was actually starting, and Mr. Beast was really endorsing PewDiePie. But besides that, I know he's a very humble man, and that's something that I appreciate about him. Is he never the fame, at least to my knowledge, never really got to his head, and it never really showed that he was an arrogant man or thought little of other people. So that's the biggest credit I can give to his name. I don't know if you guys know anything about him or know more about him.
He's actually made some banger music videos. Like,
Oh my goodness! Congratulations.
yeah, that's not
I
even.
love congratulations.
Yeah, that's not even my favorite one. Like, he's made so many other
Lasagna
ones as well.
Swedish meatballs. Is that one? I think that's that's one of them.
Just, I mean, because I think he's primarily just for other people's information. He started gaming, right? He was a streamer initially, and then I think his early videos he had some Let's Play Minecraft series. He's like a very
Yeah.
entertaining, kind of like a streamer on YouTube, one of the first ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then just his personality was so endearing that he just got very popular. But the fact that he made music videos, like high production music videos, it's like there's so much skill and talent there that's really respectable.
Yes, I
All
agree with
right.
that.
Fun little fact about his name, PewDiePie.
Yeah.
Pew is to represent the sound a laser makes. Die is what happens when you get shot by a laser. And pie, well, Pewds just thought it sounded funny. And he'd started saying it as a bit of a catchphrase while gaming, so why not?
That is a fun fact.
Wow,
That is a
didn't
fun
know
There
that.
we go.
Here's the question I would have with PewDiePie, and I do like him. I have nothing like bad to say about him. But I don't think from the content I have seen, I think he deserves the success he has, but I believe there are other content creators that I believe do what he is doing way better. And so I would say he's slightly overrated for the fact of how many subscribers he has and how popular he is.
I
I
think
think there's other
he's
people who do it better than he does, and that's not saying I don't think he's bad at it at all or by any stretch. I think he's a great guy. So I would say overrated.
I'll add. I
I
think
don't
the
I don't
way.
I don't think he's 111 million
Yeah.
subscribers good. I just don't think he's that good. That's my argument.
He really curates his content so it reaches the maximum range of people. Like he, at least I know near the beginning, like his thumbnails would be like geared towards even like Facebook moms, right? Like everyone
Yeah.
could be interested in clicking his videos. So he definitely. I think I agree with your take. I think he just maybe played the algorithm. Like he probably just really
Yeah, hats
understood
off to
it.
him for that. Hats off
So
to the
I
like. This
would
is not a bad overrated.
yeah,
This is not a hated overrated.
I would
This is just
say technically overrated.
I'm afraid of putting him in overrated because I'm afraid Mr. Beast is going to start coming for us.
oh my goodness.
But I'll be brave and I'll put him in overrated.
All right. Next we have Ichiro Suzuki. I believe that's how you say his last name.
Yep.
I don't know a whole lot about him, but I'm gonna do a little bit, and I'm probably gonna pawn him off to Jacob because Jacob's way more fanatic fan about Ichiro. I know he played for the Mariners for a very long time. He was a shortstop.
No, right fielder.
Oh, he was a right fielder.
Yeah.
He led off, right?
Correct.
He led off.
Most of his career. Yeah.
He is a Hall of Famer. I believe now he is a Hall of Famer, or maybe
He
that's
hasn't been voted in yet, but he will be.
he will be. He's going to be a future Hall of Famer. He was extremely popular in our area of Seattle. Josh, you're muted. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
Okay. He was known for hitting a lot of home runs, I believe. But no, okay.
No, he was known.
Maybe I should just stop talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're wild. Okay, I will say what Paxton knows about Ichiro is anytime he went to a Mariners game when he was a kid, that's the one name everybody would chant is Ichiro.
Yes.
So most people know the name, but they may not know the details. He was a hits king, especially singles.
Oh.
So a couple things about him that made him great is one, he had one of the fastest times from home to first base. And that's because
Oh.
when he would swing and when he would hit the ball, his swing was such that after he follows through with his swing, he's already running towards first base. So his body would immediately turn and start running up the line as he's hitting the ball and
How
following
tall
through
was
with
he?
it.
How tall was he? Like,
He wasn't very tall. He was under
and he
6 feet,
and he had one of the
probably like five
fastest.
nine.
That's
Yep.
nuts.
Yep, because he was
Interesting.
just very quick. So he wasn't one of the fastest in terms of top speed, but he was one of the quickest to ever get to first base. So he got a lot of if he hit a slow ground ball to third base and he'd be safe because he would get a head start towards the bag just with his swing. He was one of the most disciplined baseball players, somebody who was always stretching, always working. Even in between innings when he wasn't doing anything, he was stretching out to make sure his body stayed loose. Um, he he set the record for the most base hits in any single season. He had
Mm.
262 hits in 1 year.
Oh my
Um,
goodness, that's
and before
insane.
that, it was 257 was the record. So he set the all-time record, and it still stands.
Wow.
Yep. He had a bunch of hits in Japan before this. So he has career, I think, around in the major leagues, probably around like 3,000 hits. And career over both leagues, it's well over 4,000 hits for
Mhm.
both in Japan and in the United States. So he
Yep.
just got hits. His negative, also excellent defender. He had one throw that got Terrence Long thrown out at third base, and the announcer said that Ichiro just threw something out of Star Wars because he threw the ball, and it wasn't like, sometimes the outfielders throw it and it's this high, long ball that goes high in the air and then comes down. It was like a line drive throw all the way to third base from right field. And so it was just like this bullet. So it was called, something out of Star Wars,
That's
meaning
pretty
it was a
cool.
laser. His quick controversies, and then we can vote, is he didn't walk a lot. So even though he got on base a lot with hits, he didn't walk. Um, and he would sometimes not dive for balls because he would try not to get injured because he prioritized not being injured
Hmm.
over making that second effort. But because of that, he didn't get injured.
He
He
had a
had a
long
very,
career.
very healthy career. Yep. So it's like there is a debate saying, oh, he's not trying hard enough for his team. But my always counter to that is the Mariners were never good enough to be in a position where you needed him to go all out. And I think if you saw him in the playoffs, I think he would have gone all out if it meant winning a World Series. But we were never in that
How many
position.
how many teams did he play for?
The Mariners, the Yankees, and the Marlins, I believe. So 3.
He played for the Marlins. How was the Mariners the longest?
The Mariners were the longest, yeah, by far.
Hmm. Did he
So
retire a Mariner?
he retired a Mariner. He came back, and he still is integral with the organization. I don't know what he does, but he has a position with the Mariners organization where he'll help out with things,
Hmm.
but I don't know to what degree. Um,
I have a question. Just
yeah,
some baseball ignorance here. So you said he never walked as if it's a bad thing. Does that mean like he tries to hit balls
all the
that are
time.
out of the strike zone?
Yeah,
How's that a
right.
bad thing?
Because if you're taking walks when they're given to you, that's a higher percentage that you're actually getting on base and potentially helping the team. Whereas if you're trying to hit the ball, if you get a walk, you automatically go to first base. If you hit the ball, you're not guaranteed you'll get on base. So
Hmm.
yes, it's a higher upside to get a hit than it is a walk. Like a hit is worth more when it comes to sabermetrics than a walk is. But if you're just there are some players that say his average makes people overrate him because his on base percentage, which is what walks factor into, is not the highest. And there are plenty of other hitters that have a higher on base percentage than him. Um, I don't think it's a big negative on him because that was his style of play.
Hmm.
But there were times when you're like, he got out, but he could have just not swung at that last pitch and he would have been on base and helped his team. So,
Gotcha.
yep.
All right.
Um,
Underrated.
I would say underrated. Yeah, let's put him there.
I'll agree.
but we're pretty biased.
We get
Seattle.
we are very biased, but we also hate the West Coast bias where everybody else
Yeah.
is biased against us. So this is
Yeah,
us
we're
fighting
bouncing off.
against
Yeah,
everyone
taking a stand.
else. Okay, so this is the famous manga artist Togashi, who is famous for Hunter x Hunter and Yu Yu Hakusho, um, as well as others, but I believe those are the only two that I know of his works. Hunter x Hunter is probably my favorite anime of all time, and I have read the manga too.
Nice.
Higashi is an interesting character, and that lately he has been like just through hiatus after hiatus after hiatus of not working on his art. And one of the things about Japanese manga artists is that they're worked to death. And it's like very, very stressful and very, very busy. Now, of course, he's very successful, um, and just viewed very highly. But he like that got to him, and that really affected his health. I think it even affected his mental health, just the amounts of pressures that went into that. And so even though he really wanted to finish these stories, he wasn't able to. Now, as far as like controversy goes and as far as like negatives go, I don't know how much you know about the show Yu Yu Hakusho, and this is a bit of a spoiler, but a lot of people hated the ending of it. But part of the reason, I guess I won't spoil anything, but part of the reason why they hated the ending of this show was because Togashi like speed ran it. He just rushed it because he just got so tired and exhausted that he was done. But a lot of people criticize him for, the end of this show was terrible and it kind of ruined the show for me, or just made it not as good as it could have been. But the argument against, and he felt terrible about it, and he apologized to his fans and basically said, yes, I wrote an ending that I wasn't happy with, but I no longer enjoyed writing that story, and I was kind of done with that story, and I just wanted to end it. So I don't know. I've got a lot of sympathy for him and the situations he's in. So I would probably say he's underrated, because I think some of the heat that he gets is because he was pressured and he just felt like he needed to move on from that.
Let me see if this changes your mind at all. Apparently, a good fun fact about Tagashi is his favorite films is horror, and his favorite film of all time is Dawn of the Dead. There you go.
Interesting.
Big news.
He's a horror film buff.
Another
Makes me
thing
like him more.
I wanted to mention this. I think a year ago he posted.
I'm gonna take my bathroom break. Sorry.
Yep,
Sure thing.
go for it. That's one. I'm
based.
marking it down.
Based,
One bathroom
okay.
break, Max.
A year ago, I think he posted on Twitter that he was working on or playing around with releasing the next chapter of Hunter x Hunter.
Mhm.
And people on Twitter just lost their minds, right? And I don't actually think he released anything. So
He did.
Did he?
Yeah.
So there's another chapter. Okay. I didn't catch
Yeah.
up with that. So was that just it? Was that just one chapter, or is there more to that?
Did you ever read the manga past the anime?
I didn't do the manga at all. No.
Okay. Yeah, so he actually did a good amount, but
Oh.
it's since then has stopped. It hasn't finished though. He hasn't finished it. So there's still a lot of story that hasn't been told. But
Okay.
he actually did do a lot, yeah.
Okay. Never mind then, because I thought that was a bad point, but that's good.
It came out later than I think people were hoping. But
Mhm.
it actually was real, and it did come out. Now
Excellent.
that I think that drawing that he posted, I don't think that has come out yet. So like he was alluding to specifically the Dark Continent and what would be on there. That's kind of what that picture was.
Mhm.
And we haven't even gotten to the Dark Continent yet. So I think some people thought that was going to come out, but that we're not even near there. It just was more like building of the current arc. So maybe people had complaints about the pacing or that being a little bit deceptive. But when he first did come out with that tweet, he did come out with some new chapters.
Mhm. I'm gonna say underrated though, because I don't think people actually understand mangakas are just like overworked and how beautiful that story is, to be honest.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Underrated. That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Oh, it's my turn. Okay. Well, next we have the popular game developer Todd Howard.
Todd.
Todd. Yes, he is the lead producer and director game designer at Bethesda Game Studios. He was there since the beginning. He made games such as Skyrim. What else did he make? He made obviously Starfield. Yeah, so there's your polar opposites. That's his shining achievement and his low. But well, actually, Fallout 76 is probably the lowest he ever went. But I love I love Todd Howard. I believe he is very much viewed in a negative light publicly these days because of his two most recent um, games. But I would like to counter that. One, for Fallout 76, he had no part of that whatsoever, very little part of that project at all. It was actually based by a second team down in Dallas that he wasn't really a part of. So he doesn't get like that. The people who were made to make Fallout 76, this online version, he wasn't a part of that. With Starfield, I believe all the problems Starfield has isn't something that should be on Todd Howard. Also, I think he's a great public
speaker. Can you back that up? Can you explain that? Because he was hyping Starfield, man. He came out ready to spread the love and peace that Starfield was offering to the world.
He did. He really did. But I feel like he never promised anything the game didn't have, which I get. He has been known to do that before too. But I don't remember. He did. I see your point. He did overhype it. But the way I see Todd is a super down to earth guy who loves video games. I mean, this guy loves video games. He plays video games in his free time, and I like the way he talks. I like his personality. I think his public speaking is really well too. I think he is overhated.
Wow.
For what he's done. I think he's created more masterpieces than he has flops, and he doesn't get credit for that whatsoever anymore. And people kind of forget the high points of Bethesda. Also, Starfield wasn't horrible; it was just mediocre. Yes, I understand that it had a lot of it was just there.
Expectations, right?
Yeah. It was just a mediocre game. But I think the achievements Todd has more than enough says he's an underrated historical figure at this point in his career.
Historical figure. I like that. I think I could agree with that. I think Skyrim is so foundational to just games in general. I would say underrated as well. I think gamers can be really picky and complainy, so I'll say that underrated.
He's a likable guy, even though some things that he's been a part of have not been likable. So okay, underrated. There he goes. You did it, Pax.
Bye, Todd. You're welcome.
You're welcome. If you're watching this, Todd,
we love you.
us.
Come on the podcast.
Come on the podcast.
Let's talk about Starfield. We love it. We absolutely love it. 10 out of 10.
All right, we gotta move on from Todd. We love you, Todd, but we gotta move on. Next on our list is H.P. Lovecraft, the creator of Cthulhu itself. I love H.P. Lovecraft. I think I think he was not the most likable guy if you look at him as like a person, his personality. I'm pretty sure he was racist. I'm pretty sure he was just kind of. I think he was also an outcast. Not the most well received person in general, but I love his horror and I love his stories. And I just enjoy the way he writes. But I guess one of the things I'd say about his, well, two points I would say about his style that I really enjoy is one, that he had this concept of horror being mostly in the imagination of the reader. So a lot of his writing was building up these things to where there was this mystery and this lack of knowledge shrouding this kind of unearthly entity. But he would build it up to where you would start creating in your own mind what this was and what it looked like and what evil intents it may or may not have. So he was really a big proponent of leaving some things to the reader to try to figure out themselves. And he believed that was more frightening than actually revealing anything about it. So that was a big point of his horror and his type of writing, which I've always really enjoyed and agreed with, that a lot of the things that are most frightening, once you learn about something, it demystifies it and makes it less scary.
We touched on this in
So
the music podcast. It's like this intentional ambiguity is what's going on here, and it's
Correct.
very powerful.
Also, he was estimated to have written about 100,000 letters in his lifetime.
Wow.
It would place H.P. Lovecraft as the second only to French writer Voltaire to the most letters ever written. Estimated 100,000.
That's amazing.
Also, he almost died a virgin, even though he was married at age 34. Apparently, he really didn't like the idea of sex. So there's your 2 fun facts.
Interesting.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, so he's the anti-P. So the rule of P definitely doesn't apply to him.
Yeah, he goes instantly into underrated.
Underrated. Yeah, instantly underrated because he is by no means the P word. That's right. One other thing I would say is that I feel like realistically he's probably based. I think people know of him, respect him, and respect his writings. He has gotten a little bit of negative attention because of his racist views, I believe, or maybe it wasn't racism, maybe it was misogyny. I don't know.
It is racism. He is partly racist. I'm sure of that.
Yep. So there's a little bit of a negative to him. I really enjoyed it when, like, same thing with Stephen King, when these writers create a whole like multiverse and universe around all their different books, and so that's what he also does. So all his books connect to each other in some way, and I enjoy that. I enjoy digging deep into like the lore of all these different characters and stuff. So, all right, we'll move on.
I base.
No, he's underrated because of the rule of P.
Okay, that's automatic. Okay.
Yeah, that's
we cannot dispute that. Understandable. Okay, well, we have.
Yeah, I mean, you guys can dispute it if you want that rule to apply to the opposite, basically.
I think he's based because he's racist. I don't think he's underrated.
Okay. The racism
It balances out.
We'll add in the racism into the rule as well. That's the rule. That's the sub rule of R.
Awesome.
So he is now based.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
All right.
So next we have Leonardo DiCaprio, the actor. You all know him if you watch movies. He's a prolific actor. I mean, he's acted he's maybe since like 20 or maybe even younger. I'm not sure when he started, but he's been acting for a while. He's like 50 now. And he's just naturally gifted at it. People typically, I would say, very highly respect this actor, and I'm not. I mean, I guess one thing that's a little sus. I mean, because we've just introduced this rule of P, is that he typically dates women a good 20
early 20s.
Yeah, a good 20, 30 years younger.
Is he on the Epstein list?
No, not officially.
So he could be overrated if you count that. It's getting close, but
well, let me defend him a little bit.
Sure.
During a dinner scene in Django Unchained, Leonardo DiCaprio slammed his fist on the table so hard, breaking his hand and cutting his hand severely. However, DiCaprio never broke character and finished the scene while his hand was broken.
Respectable.
That's pretty based.
That's pretty based. I won't lie.
I would get it.
Also, he's been in so many amazing films like Remnant. What was the other one? He was in
Shutter Island.
Yes, Shutter Island. Yeah, I think he's
Catch Me If You Can was one of his earlier movies. Inception was one of his most famous movies. He's a really good actor.
He doesn't miss.
One of the things about him is that he would always turn in amazing performances, but not get any award for it.
And Django Unchained. That was a good movie.
Yeah, base. All right.
Wolf of Wall Street. I forget that one. Anyways, yeah, I agree with based. And we have next on the list Christopher Columbus. Very hotly contested and maybe even despised in our modern age due to the
rule of R, man. He was a racist.
Yeah, I think one of his statues probably got torn down in some college somewhere. I think I probably heard of something like that. Because colonialism, and you know, obviously, like it's not great that natives had to fight against Columbus and defend their territory and lose, but that is sort of the rule of life. But I mean, you have to give props. Like that's a large sea to like voyage across the it's Atlantic, right? Atlantic Sea. It's not easy when it's 1400s and you don't have a lot of medicine. So um, I think it's an impressive thing what he did, but also there's the fact that he wasn't really the first to do it to discover
Hmm.
America.
He was
So
overcredited.
so
Hmm.
even then, I would say he's a little overrated.
But
I
what about this? What about this?
sure.
Christopher Columbus actually is not his real name.
What?
His real name
Ooh.
is Cristoforo Colombo, and that's how you actually pronounce his name in the original Anglicization where he was born.
Interesting.
So, but it is changed to Christopher Columbus
That is a
as
really cool fun fact, actually.
That
yeah.
does nothing for me.
So it's his original name was Cristoforo
I can
Colombo.
see why he changed his name.
Yeah, I do too.
Cristoforo.
Columbo.
Cristoforo.
Oh.
Okay, that's cool. Well, okay.
Overrated. Move on. Let's
Yeah.
make this one fast.
I say
like,
overrated.
yeah. Get him up there. Get up there with PewDiePie.
Mhm.
Next we have singer Elvis Presley. I am a
Perfect.
huge. Okay, well, that was fast. I am a huge Elvis Presley fan. He was actually my number one most listened to artist in 2023. What is so funny to you?
I remember the moment you figured that out. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I blew up.
that's all I'm gonna say.
Elvis Presley is actually he has sold the most. What is it? He sold the most. He has
Albums.
the most albums out of any artist in history. He's number one, which is kind of a crazy fact.
That's so cool.
Things I admire about Elvis is he was super dedicated to giving back to the people that liked him, giving back to his fans. I mean, part of the reason he died is he was the only thing he found joy in life was being able to sing for people and make other people happy, and he did it so much that he killed himself because to get him on stage, he was taking 5 drugs just to get him on stage and be able to perform for people. It's insane, and he knew that, and he knew he was dying the entire time. But he wanted to. That's the way he wanted to go out, was just giving back. I really like him. One thing I would say that I feel like when people say they like Elvis and they like listening to Elvis, they get a certain, I don't know what the word is, but I don't feel like Elvis Presley is a very respected artist anymore these days, and the fans that like him don't get a ton of respect for some reason. There's an aura about liking Elvis
I
that
think
isn't
one
seen
of the
fondly.
I think one of the negatives is that he stole from some black artists. So I think there's at least the I have not looked into this myself, but there was one person I was listening to that said that he took like his dancing and that whole like integration into music, that was stolen from the black community.
Hmm.
From an
I believe I've heard that too, but it's because
yeah.
he actually was raised in a very low income area where there was a lot of black people, and that's where he picked it up from.
Mm.
The way he like moved his legs and stuff, he picked it up from those areas and brought it into mainstream. Um, I
Interesting.
don't know. I don't know if he actually stole that, but
Okay.
I would say he's underrated just because most people today don't. I don't feel like he gets a lot of respect these days, and I think he has tons of amazing songs.
I would say he's based, so it's up to Josh.
I think you gotta give. I, hmm. I do think he's kind of getting forgotten. I think I would go based because I don't think people. I don't know. I don't think he's really that popular nowadays, like in this current climate. So,
No, not at all.
mhm. Yep, based.
Sorry, Pax. We can't get him there for you.
It's all right.
All right. This next one. Now, this little guy in here named David is kind of showing the most in this image, but there's this bigger guy behind him, or in front of him, I guess, named Goliath. So this is a picture from David and Goliath. But we are not looking at David, we are looking at Goliath. Is he overrated and underrated? Now, it's kind of the most anticlimactic fight, I would say, that's a historical fight. Now there is some part of that is pretty hype because it's the hypeness of it is David, this person who says, "What am I? I'm a dog that you come at me with a stick," right? So this
That
just
trash talk.
yeah, this
Right up
Goliath's
the
trash
gates.
talk. It was on point. Like,
Yeah.
so we should factor that in when we're talking about overrated versus underrated.
Yeah.
He was also Goliath thought he was invincible. I don't know what the estimates on his height are. I think he's estimated to be around 9 feet tall.
Mhm.
But big giant guy that everybody else in the Israelite army was afraid of fighting, even King Saul himself, who was an imposing figure. King Saul was taller than most men. He was the tallest. He was chosen because of his stature. So he was tall and buff and could probably take down most of these Palestinians who were coming to fight. But Goliath scared even him. And so David was the brave one. David was the one who, with God at our side, we shouldn't fear any man type of attitude. And he goes in and just takes down Goliath with a slingshot and a rock, and boom, fight over, guy's dead. So Goliath, I'm like, is this guy, was he that cocky, that into himself? Or was he just actually not a good fighter? Like, I feel like if this
It
guy's
was all
swinging
show. It was
around
all
the
show.
sling, yeah, was he just all show? So is he actually overrated
Is he
as
the
far
biggest
as good of a
overrated character
fighter?
ever?
Is he the biggest overrated character ever?
Well, apparently, there is a very good chance that Goliath is a son of the Nephilim, and the Nephilim
Mhm.
are fallen angels. So that would make him almost a He would. There's a good chance that he
Yep.
was.
He's got I
Good fact.
disagree with this, but if he's got angelic powers backing him too, and he's still getting
Yeah,
tanked by this slingshot, I feel like he's
yeah,
overrated,
overrated.
man.
He's an overrated. Yeah,
Yeah.
Overrated. Josh, there we go. Sorry, Goliath. Any one of us would have stood up to you.
yeah. It's not even an accomplishment at this point.
All right. Okay, so this one is mine as well. This is King Solomon. So Solomon the wise, Solomon, the man who wrote Ecclesiastes, the wisest to ever live. I think it was said that there is no man wiser now, or was it even put into or ever will be, other than
I think so.
Christ
Yeah.
himself.
I believe he wrote Proverbs
No
too.
king of
So
Israel.
he
Yeah.
wrote Proverbs too.
Which Proverbs is amazing.
No king of Israel. Yeah. I don't know. So I've read all of his biblical writings, and there are some things that I agree with. There's a lot of wisdom in there, and like Ecclesiastes is fantastic. It's a book that anybody should read, even if you have no interest in religion. I would read Ecclesiastes. It really kind of paints the picture of life in a very bleak way, very nihilistic until you get to the end, and there's basically like this kind of but God at the very end of it. But through so much of it, it's very like, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. And it digs into that sentiment. So I really love that. But one of like, oh man, I've always had a problem with this passage in the Bible where it's demonstrating Solomon's wisdom by when two women come to him
Yes.
arguing that the baby is theirs, and Solomon comes up with just this brainchild, this 5 head move of, why don't we cut the baby in half, and then you each get half of it. And then one woman said, okay, yeah, sure, and the other one screamed and says, no, let the other one have it. Now, I don't know if people were just different back then, and like cutting babies in half was a common thing. I don't know what's going on, but I feel like I feel like that wouldn't work nowadays. And
Yeah.
I feel
No.
like that's not the wisest thing to do. Like, oh, I know. We'll cut the baby in half. And obviously the
One of them's
woman,
gonna want it. Yeah.
yeah, obviously one of them's going to say, yeah, let's do that. That's fair.
Mm.
I can't think of anyone saying, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I just
All right.
don't feel
Well,
like that's a wise tactic.
here's a question: do you think we're gonna see this man in heaven? Yes or no?
Yes.
I'd say yeah.
Josh?
Yeah.
Yeah. That I mean, that's pretty controversial. That's not a universally held.
Mhm.
Why? Yes.
Well, I think. Go
Go
ahead,
ahead, Josh.
Jacob. You first,
No,
Jacob.
Let's hear
they're
Josh.
yeah, okay.
Josh hasn't talked a lot.
Okay, I'll go
Why do you
then.
think?
Well,
Yeah, I've talked a lot.
he was anointed by God. He was put into the covenant. He was, um, and another thing that's interesting is the whole concept of how you define someone to be set to go to heaven in the Old Testament, because Jesus wasn't actually um, known. Um, there was no one who knew about Jesus because he hadn't been born yet. So, but I do think I would lean towards yes because of his involvement in being the covenant of Israel. Like he's part of that, the chosen people of Israel, and he
He did a
seemed
lot of evil things. He did
yes.
a lot of evil
So
things.
he had relations with over 1,000 women. But
Doesn't
I
sound like someone's.
you know what?
So that doesn't sound like someone we're gonna see in heaven.
Yeah, that is very debatable. But I do think from what he said, it seems like he had the heart of a Christian, which is that doesn't really say much. But I'm not obviously we can't even be certain in general. We can't
Mhm.
say that
Let me
definitively
say that.
about anyone. So
Yeah. Let me say it. Like Jesus says, we'll know them by their fruits. So what good fruits do you think Solomon had?
uh didn't he build the entire temple of God?
He did.
Like he actually built
He
the
did.
temple. Yeah, David
Yeah.
David wanted to, but he displeased God by doing the Bathsheba thing,
Hmm.
and then God was like, "But your son Solomon will build my temple for me." And so
Hmm.
and that was a lot of work and years of building and construction, but he did that, and that's his thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I don't remember the specific passages, but I think there are some proverbs, and I think even at the end of Ecclesiastes, we see a disposition from Solomon of a repentant man,
Mhm.
of somebody who was before God admitting his faults and his wrongdoings through his writing and speaking of trust and faith in God.
Mm.
So but I think there can be some dispute over was that actually written after all these sins, and like you could talk about that, I suppose. But I feel like there's scriptural evidence. It's not said explicitly, so we don't really know, but I feel like there's evidence of him being repentant. And yes, we can know them by our fruits doesn't mean that we know whether or not they were Christian. That doesn't mean that we it's not a foolproof
Mhm.
test on whether or not somebody has salvation. And that is specifically in Christ. It's not you're a Christian because of your fruits. You'll be known by your fruits.
Yeah,
Meaning generally when you
Yeah.
look at somebody, their life will speak to whether or not they're a hypocrite or they're speaking true.
it's a
Hmm.
necessary condition, not a sufficient condition. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's
I would say that. I mean, his life doesn't reflect the life that we should see in a Christian. I mean, having 1,000 relations with women. I don't know. This is kind of an irrelevant point. I get this point, but
I think I think generally people what do people think? They think he's the wisest man
mhm.
in the Old Testament, and he was very
Christians think
rich.
that.
Um but
Very, very rich.
is he really talked about a lot? I don't know. I don't know what popular conception is, to be honest.
I mean, to be honest, he wrote three books of the Bible? That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Song of Solomon, Ecclesiastes, and Proverbs. And I love Proverbs, so I'm just gonna throw out my vote. I'm gonna say,
I would say
boy,
I might say based.
uh, underrated because he gets a lot of flack.
I'm going to say based.
Okay.
All right, another one of my entries, 3 months in a row. Yay. Or actually, yeah, Goliath, Solomon, and Kanye West.
Kanye
The
or
yay.
Yay? No, he's Yay. What are we
Yay.
doing?
Sorry, I am so sorry. Yay. Um, boy, a lot can be said, and I don't think anybody is unaware of who this guy is. I mean, it's hard to put somebody rated highly who's clearly anti-Semitic. But then again, he's also like, I think just does that because he's fighting against people. He's definitely bipolar. He definitely has mental stuff. So I don't take a lot of what he says and like really weigh him heavily for saying it. I don't think he's pro Hitler and the Holocaust. But he talks in ways sometimes of like, yeah, that was a positive thing. He comes off that way. His music has taken so many turns, and he has some incredible music. Very, very creative, ingenious in a lot of ways in what he has done with hip hop and with kind of exploration of music itself.
Mm.
He's also written a lot of stinkers too, as well. So I don't know. I'd say musically, I think he's underrated. Um,
Really?
yeah, I do.
Yeah,
Think
I
so.
agree.
Um, personally, as a character, he's just so wild. I don't even know where to place him. Um, I think he has more haters than anything else.
Do any of you guys know Graduation was his album, right? Wasn't that like a very high, like top
Oh, I
10
love
albums of
Graduation.
all
Yeah.
time or something like
Yeah,
that? Like it
yeah, it
was
was way up
highly
there.
acclaimed, right?
Hmm.
So I think he's
Well,
well respected as a musician.
Yeah, I'd say musically probably. Ah, he is well respected, but I think his antics in life overshadow his
Hmm.
ability.
Hmm.
one example of that is he is often referred to himself as God's chosen one.
Oh boy.
Oh
That
yeah,
is one of his most popular names to give himself, as he believes he is sent from God to change the earth, and he has a very much God complex.
I
Gotta
mean,
love that.
anybody who has a god complex, I feel like is overrated.
I mean, I think Kanye has great music. I think he's an absurd man. Just his day-to-day life, his personal life. Uh, I don't think he's been a good father, which I take
oh
off a lot of
yeah,
points for that.
oh yeah.
He's kind of failed in that department and made his whole life about him and not anyone else. And he already gets a lot of hate, but I would say still slightly overrated because there's some people who think he's untouchable. A lot of people who think he's untouchable.
I might go overrated as well. I was in based, like upper based, low
What are we doing?
overrated, but
Kanye did not get his.
I could go overrated, or I could go yay.
Why?
He
I'm
just
going
he's in yay tier.
in Ye tier.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I can get behind that.
Yeah.
He's a little all over the place.
He's too far all over the place. He can't be ranked.
Yeah.
He
Nobody even knows what he's
transcends the
doing.
rating tier
Yeah, he's
list.
above being ranked.
He exists in all three at once.
All right, moving on.
Yeah, he exists in all three.
Anyways, okay, so next we have Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa?
Yes, I thought of this character last second when we needed a new character to add to this list because I think recently I mean I think especially in the 1900s she was highly regarded, and then I don't know, people found out that she kind of wasn't the best person to be around, specifically if you were on the younger side of things, perhaps a little abusive even, um, poor advice in terms of self harm, but widely seen as a upstanding, righteous, religious, noble, morally sound person. So it's it's debatable. What do you guys think?
Everything
I
I've ever heard about her is just like almost deifying her in a way.
Hmm.
Like she is so highly viewed, and even it seems like people who are not religious at all and atheistic like are careful to not say anything negative about her, like just always. Now I don't know if that's changed. It sounds like that's changed a little bit in some of the current outlook of her, but I I feel like I don't know, but this is what happens to certain individuals in the Roman Catholic Church, especially if they reach a title of saint, um, that they become venerated to too high of a degree.
well, part of that might be because she refused a national Noble of Honor. award and instead requested 192,000 budget to be given to the poor in India.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, that's kind of respectable, actually.
I mean, she definitely did a lot that was great, right? There's a reason why, but it's like I said, she's venerated, I think, beyond that station. It's like there is a point in which people make or reach because of their charity and because of their selflessness that they if they fall from grace from that, they're seen as the worst people ever. But if they continue to work and like excel in that area, they're seen as like gods among men, right? It's like when people start to be so altruistic in their path of life and it's very, very public, they're it's such a crazy tightrope, but they're either gods among men or they are hypocrites to be the most hated and reviled of men. I don't know. It just becomes so extreme when you're considering people like that. I felt like we should have brought a Catholic friend for this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm gonna say overrated.
Overrated.
I
I
agree.
feel like that's hard. That's harsh, but it's not discounting what she's done that's positive. It's more of just the worship of her. All right. Josh, you want to talk about
Sure.
this crazy haired guy?
I'll try to
Who is
introduce
this?
him. This guy is known as Einstein. He was actually named after the popular kids show Little Einsteins.
Really?
No, I'm kidding.
Oh.
No, it was
I don't know.
What's up, Pax?
I don't know when Einstein was around, I'll be honest.
Oh my goodness. Early 1900s.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So he was instrumental.
Oh, he was during World War II.
Yeah. So if people seeing this podcast have recently seen the Oppenheimer movie, he makes an appearance there, and you can get a sense of what he's done. But he's very, 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 very popular for being a physicist, one of the best physicists of all time, and discovering special and general relativity, which are ways to describe objects that move near the speed of light and how energy relates to matter. Kind of like what happens at that at that area of super fast objects, and also really like large objects, and how it, like time and space bend, and
Right. So the
effects.
kind of view, general relativity is kind of this view that gravitational forces is the bending of space time. So it's light is and there are a lot of models that show that if you put like a sphere in this grid of space, it all of a sudden bends around it. Well, that's time and space being bent around mass. So every object of mass has this space time bending around it, and it affects light and affects all these things.
Mm-hmm. Another thing in the Oppenheimer movie I actually learned just by listening to critics was he may have been instrumental in allowing the Allies to win World War II by alerting the then president, I believe, that if Heisenberg got to the atomic bomb first, the Axis powers would win. And so he was kind of like a
warning.
exactly like a please hurry up. I think he knows Oppenheimer, right? I think he told Oppenheimer, you got to get on this ASAP because they're about to get the bomb and you're gonna lose. So
really,
he was just he had that reputation where he knew what was going on. He was German, so that's his background. He's from Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So
But I believe he was a Jew.
I didn't know that.
Wasn't he Jewish? I think he was Jewish.
I actually didn't know that. I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But he's from Germany. So what, if any, do you guys know any bad things? Any poor reputation marks about Einstein?
I have a fact that you can take to your next cocktail party to impress all your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Einstein couldn't swim.
Oh,
lame! Oh boy, he's overrated. Overrated.
And apparently, he never had academic success and always struggled in school. So there's your two fun facts. If that sways you at all. I know that not swimming definitely will for Jake. I'm sure you can relate to that, Josh. So I'm sure that'll just open him up in your mind.
I think he's the best swimmer.
No. Josh is significantly a better swimmer than Einstein. No matter what may have happened to Josh, at some point.
Okay, yeah.
Josh, it's okay. It's okay,
Anyway.
Josh.
Another podcast, we'll talk about it.
That's a story. That is a story of what happened to Josh.
Too long of a story.
Too long of a story.
Long.
Albert Einstein, I think I don't think he's the most brilliant scientist in history, but he is one of them. And I think he is a tier above Stephen Hawking, and just his mind and his creative thinking. He also wrote some books about like philosophy as well. He's written a lot about God and religion. He doesn't believe in a personal God, but he believed there was a God. He was also very instrumental in advancing ideas that he disagreed with. So he was very much an antagonist to quantum mechanics, and he was Niels Bohr's biggest opponent in discussing quantum mechanics. He would often say things like, I like to believe that the moon's there, whether I observe it or not. He called quantum entanglement spooky action at a distance. He liked to say things like God doesn't play dice. So he was very much had some very quotable lines. He was a very quotable guy. He's got some great quotes. That's a point in his favor. Very much against quantum mechanics because it doesn't match up with relativity. And that's like one of the big discussions, even to this day, is how do we reconcile quantum mechanics with general relativity? And a lot of theories, the standard model, is trying to bring those two together. And that's a discussion for a different time. Einstein, I think he's based. I honestly
One
think
thing,
he's based.
real quick before we rate, I just wanted to point out that the practical applications of his work, especially in comparison to Hawking, are clocks and navigation systems. Like the fact that satellites are moving at such high speeds.
Yeah, GPS wouldn't work without his theory. Yep.
They're modified slightly to account for the velocity of satellites so that the times can be synced with devices on Earth and satellites that are moving. And so that is an immensely practical application of his work. He's just not like not just a purely theoretical physicist. He's like, this is actually useful now, today. So just gotta put that out there. I think that makes him very, very useful.
Yep. There's way more we can say about this. Another very small nugget is before him, there was kind of this concept that science, we had learned everything there is to know, and like we pretty much had nothing new to learn. It was just getting more precise. And then Einstein came along and said, you guys are a bunch of idiots. We know nothing. So I would say based, because I think people give him the credit he's due. Like his name is everywhere. I think they maybe don't understand why he's so incredible, but they know he's incredible. So I think he's based.
Based.
Axe?
Oh, I'm up. Okay. So let me introduce you to a very good friend of mine. This is Jonathan the Turtle. I'm going to make this round very short. Jonathan the Turtle was born in 1832, and he is still with us to this day.
No way.
I'm going to repeat that. Jonathan the Turtle was born in 1832 at the founding of America.
No way.
And he's still with us to this day.
That was 1776.
He is the oldest. he is the oldest recorded living animal ever, and he's with us to this day.
When was he born?
And yet nobody knows about Jonathan the Turtle. His name is not out there. This man was born in literally 1832, and he's still with us. He's alive. That's insane.
From the founding of America, 1832.
Yes, underrated.
That's underrated.
190. This guy's 100. Do you realize how many years this guy's
seen? That's a lot of years.
He was around with George Washington.
Exactly, dude. That's insane.
The Declaration of Independence.
That is insane. He could have been. He literally could have been there. I don't know this story, but he could have been like in the same state. I don't even know if he's in America.
Came over on the Mayflower. Oh,
no, he's not that old, but he's old, dude. That's crazy. Like this guy.
That. No, I respect that.
Based underrated.
On the turtle.
Absolutely underrated. People need to know about him.
Question. Wasn't he the last turtle of his species, or was that another turtle?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
He's a subspecies called the algebra giant tortoise. He's huge too. He's huge.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I'll go underrated.
Right. Underrated. Moving on. This scratchy, blurry looking photo is a picture of Alexander the Great, the Persian emperor who conquered most of the Mesopotamian area. I feel like I'm saying these words wrong. But anyways, everybody knows of Alexander the Great, another one of these characters in history. I don't want, we could talk about him a lot. I don't want to talk too much, but I want to say one thing, and I think most people know this about his ruling style, is he was very big on integrating the other countries into his army. And this was one of his like really, really significant leadership styles that helped strengthen his rule, but it also was a little bit of the downfall as well, because he tried to learn the cultures and integrate the cultures of all these different nations that he would conquer and that would rule under him. So he basically tried not to make them just assimilate into culturally their way of doing things, but would assimilate into his army and into his military might and power. So he kind of tried to walk this line of basically appealing to everybody. But the problem with that is then some people are upset at him for basically catering to the false views of these other nations and the false way of living, or just they had dislike for that. He was, you know, catering to this group of people or that group of people. So it caused a little bit of dissension in his ranks, but it also is what allowed him to grow his military might so much, because he was winsome and he was good at winning over these other nations
Well,
to fight for him.
tapping into that, I'd like to point out that in 15 years of conquest, Alexander never lost a battle. Alexander the Great's military tactics and strategies are still studied to this day. From his first victory at age 18, Alexander gained a great reputation of leading his men to battle with impressive speed, allowing smaller forces to reach and break the enemy lines before his foes were ready. Also, another fun fact is that his body was preserved in a vat of honey and was later found by Egyptian.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's out of honey for
Two
me.
fun facts.
I think he was also a student of Aristotle.
He was. Yeah, I was going to say that. This comes full circle to Socrates. Yep. He was Aristotle's student.
All right. Based.
I'd
say based. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the base guy.
Okay. What do I want to say
Nice.
about this guy? Neil deGrasse Tyson. Big time science communicator of the 21st century. He had a show, I think it was just called The Cosmos, if I'm right. So I don't know how I feel about him, because so I watched a little bit of the show The Cosmos and I did not like it. I thought it was very watered down, not great. And it was disappointing. Now, that said, I know a lot of people that do love it, and I do think he is a good communicator and he is somebody who is easy to listen to. He also can kind of be pretty arrogant and high and mighty sometimes in how he deals with people and how he talks to people, and can kind of be out of touch. And there is some controversy over that, some of the tweets he's made. But I also think, I don't know, I thought at the time when The Cosmos was coming out, everybody loved him. And maybe I just wanted to hate him. And so I did, because I felt like, okay, his scientific achievements are nowhere even near like Stephen Hawking's, but everybody knows his name and he's like a big deal. And there are some other guys who are also science speakers like Sean Carroll. But they're also, the work they're doing in the scientific field, I think, is much more impressive than what Neil deGrasse Tyson is doing. Which this is just my like very, very, very surface level opinion of him. I've never really done a deep dive into his character. It's just he always was kind of a guy that rubbed me the wrong way, but everybody loved him and I never knew why.
Maybe that's because He has
Let's hear.
several sexual misconduct court cases going on currently.
What?
So
That's
very,
yay tier.
very minor. But apparently they're still going on to this day.
Minor?
A few of them.
Okay.
Not minors. They're all of age. But that might be why you don't like him.
He's
All
a
right,
funny guy, though.
I'm done talking about him. I think he's overrated, but you guys give me your view.
I think he's. I feel like he is hated a lot. I don't know.
he's based.
I think he's based. I have not seen a lot of people really high on Neil deGrasse Tyson. So I think he's.
I think he's he's almost like a comedian, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like he's so fun to listen to, even though you don't actually get a lot of like. I mean, you do get some cool trivia, but I don't think you actually are gonna like learn how like black holes work like exactly. He's not that's not what he's aiming to do. I guess he's more interested in infusing like this enthusiasm and curiosity to the younger generation. That's his whole deal. So
All right.
anyways, we got Nikola Tesla next.
Who is that?
Oh my goodness.
Basically this is
Why do you always have to make a reaction like that?
Because it's like you've never studied history before.
I don't know who Nikola Tesla is.
okay, this guy is foundational.
You know what electricity is, Paxton?
Yes.
Do you know what a coil is? Sorry. Okay, Josh, go.
I will go. This guy is basically the mad scientist in.
Wait, he made Tesla?
No.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, I saw electricity. I saw that. Okay.
Tesla is named for him.
That's right.
That is the name.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
But he was before Tesla.
He's like 1800s, late 1800s. And so basically, this guy is credited for founding AC, alternating current, and alternating current is basically like a voltage that is sinusoidal, so it oscillates between positive and negative. And what you can do with that is, like power so many different appliances. And essentially, just to get down to the point, he was basically fighting against Edison and inventing many applications and other inventions. And he didn't really get, especially in his life, he didn't really get a lot of the
accolades.
Yes,
he was
patents.
He was ahead of his thoughts were ahead of his time.
So far ahead. He even tried to get people to invest in his idea to generate infinite amounts of energy. Like he had some crazy idea like that. He kind of went insane as he was nearing the end of his life. But he I think the Tesla coil is what Jacob was alluding to. That was him. I'm sure there are many more that I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, he's just an inventor, and lots of like modern day electronics wouldn't be possible without Nikola Tesla.
Paxton, question: have
Go
you ever
ahead.
seen the movie The Prestige?
Yeah, I've seen The Prestige.
You like that movie, right?
Yeah,
great movie. Do you remember when Hugh Jackman is trying to figure out how his opponent, I forget his name, did the trick?
I know. Yeah.
The guy he went to see was Nikola Tesla.
Oh,
The guy that was
I
like
do know that guy.
duplicating the hats and the cats, and then
Yeah.
whole
That was
thing.
Nikola.
That was Nikola Tesla.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now this is starting to ring some bells now that you're describing him. One of Nikola Tesla's most famous quote is, "I do not think there is any thrill that can go through the human heart like that felt by an inventor when he sees some creation of the brain unfolding to success. Such emotions make a man forget food, sleep, friends, love, everything."
Mm-hmm. I think he's very well respected nowadays, though. I think what his accomplishments have been, like they've been documented, and people realize, wow, this guy was ahead of his time. So I think you'd have to make an argument to say underrated at this point in time, I would say.
Yeah. He also had insomnia and obsessive compulsive behavior and would often work for over 80 hours straight without any rest. Which is insane.
I lean towards thinking he's potentially still underrated, but I can't make a case for it. And that's because I feel like there are people who really understand the science and the math behind his work still are always in awe of him and what he did, and like how he was able to piece these things together with the limited amount of knowledge that came before him. So I feel like he might still be underrated, but I do think you are right in that like nowadays he like everybody like reveres him.
Hmm.
So I'm
Vote
fine with based.
underrated.
Underrated?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm going underrated. We're
yeah. I
doing
All
it.
gave
right.
you a chance.
We're
Well,
doing it.
yeah,
He
I'll do
sounds
it.
underrated.
We're
I've
doing
never
it.
heard of.
I'll do
I've never
underrated.
heard of him.
Okay, we got you there.
That's fine.
That's where my heart was, but my mind
There we
wasn't
go.
there.
There we go.
Who's this guy?
Oh, I think that's mine. Yes, this is a popular Bible character, Samson. I'll give you a little rundown on what Samson was known for. He was one of the judges of Israel. He was granted great strength that came from, I believe, not cutting his hair, and but he was often growing up. He was a very lustful man and got into a lot of bad situations with women. One of the women he dated. Uh, he was being hunted by, I forget who he was being hunted. I think it was the Palestinians.
Philistines.
It was the Philistines. It was the Philistines, and he told, because he didn't tell anyone his secret where his strength came from his hair, but then he told this girl, and then she cut off his hair because she was working with the Philistines, and he got captured. And that is the story that everyone focuses on and really highlights how stupid he was, and he really was. But what I think is really cool about Samson is his finish, where he basically kills himself, but is able to take out a bunch of Philistines also. And he lost his strength, but he was given back to him for one final hurrah. And what I think is really cool is he's mentioned in I think it's called the Hall of Faith. What is it called?
Hmm. I think that's what it's
Uh,
called.
in the New Testament. So
Yeah.
it's assumed that he even was a
In
believer.
Hebrews. Yep.
Yeah, and it is going to be in heaven. So I really like his story. I think obviously there's a lot about it, a lot of negatives, and I believe people really, really narrow in on the negatives, and he's seen in a very bad light for a lot of good reasons. But I love his finish. I think it's incredible, and I would say he's underrated.
Interesting. Josh?
Yeah, I think a lot of people. I don't know about a lot, but it's interesting how he was. I don't think anyone else committed. Well, okay, hold up. I don't think anyone else committed suicide and was like favored by God than Samson. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something
Yeah,
that's
that's
pretty controversial in Christian circles that he committed suicide. I mean, it was a good sacrifice, but it was at the cost of his life, and so that's people point to Samson and might say, is committing suicide really on all fronts in every case bad? And maybe they might say no. So that's interesting. But yeah, the sacrifice. I think that's a really heroic characteristic of Samson. It's
But
really.
the way he got his strength back one
Mhm,
last time, I find that very, very cool.
mhm. Well, he's also kind of naive, I guess. Or I don't know if you would call it naive, but like the fact that he gave up his secret to Delilah,
Hmm.
right? Like that's you shouldn't do that and you
Yeah,
shouldn't mingle with, you know,
I believe people really hyper focus on that part of the story.
right.
But like I said, I think the fact he got his strength back, and his strength came from his faith, and he realized that, and he had faith that God was going to give him strength one last time, so he could do this one final act. I believe that shows amazing faith, like amazing faith. Like he
Mm,
truly believed he could push over, like what he pushed over is inhuman. He pushed over pillars to a building. Like that's insane.
mm-hmm.
And the whole thing collapsed. But he had faith that he could do it and that God was going to give him the strength. And he was okay with that. Like he knew he was going to die and he was okay with that. He put his life in God's hands. And I think that's incredible. And he doesn't get credit enough for that act.
Good point. Good point.
Underrated.
Well, one more quick fun fact. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
with the jawbone of a donkey, he killed like 300 people. So,
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. That was insane.
yeah, I don't know how people do that, but he did it.
He did
So
it.
very impressive.
Strongest man alive.
I would say, gotta think about this one. What do you think, Jake?
So I was thinking overrated going into this, and then I thought based as Paxton was talking. and then now I'm thinking underrated. For one thing, to me, so much is said by how a race is finished than how it began. And the ending of things is always very important. And even if I'm considering a story, if the story is okay but has a great ending, it's just so satisfying. And it's like I would love that over like a good story. A terrible ending can ruin a story. A great ending can elevate a story to be great itself.
Mhm.
So I'll go underrated just for his ending.
I think what his ending is so it's not that it was just like this minor victory in killing all these Philistines. It was a victory in that he had faith in that, and it showed that he had faith. And I believe that is incredible, considering everything he went through. So cool.
All right.
Oh boy, I think it's another one of mine. I believe this is Winston Churchill.
It is. Yeah.
I hope some of you know a little bit about him. I don't know a lot about him. I know a lot of people credit him to be an incredible mastermind in the way he was able to counter the air attacks on London. I know that a lot of people thought London was just going to be wiped off the map once these air raids started. I forget what exactly he did, but he did a lot of really impressive moves to be able to counter that and buy time for the Americans to come help. He is known to be one of the best public speakers of this generation. I mean, he really did wonders in rallying England to come to aid and making them unified. And I think that's really cool. I can respect that. I don't know if any of you guys got any thoughts on Winston Churchill.
To be honest, I knew he was related to war and that he was British, so I'm gonna have to leave it to Jake.
Oh.
I knew a little bit more.
We all know terribly little about him. I have a huge book on him called The Last Lion that I have not read yet. But no, Paxton, I know what you said is correct. He was viewed as being bold and courageous. He was a unifier. So he brought the country together at its most crucial point. But he wasn't only bold, he was calculated with with the wartime decisions. But he was fearless. He was a fearless individual who plowed forward with his beliefs. And so I think a lot of people view that very highly. As far as the specifics of what he did, I forget them. I probably come across them numerous times, but I just history is something I don't remember very well. Yeah, I don't.
How would you say based? I mean,
I'd say he's based
I
because
don't think he's overrated.
Well,
yeah,
the
there might
fact.
be some criticism he gets as far as his political views. So
Mhm.
he was more close to the conservative side of things. So he'd be more closely related to the GOP party if we were trying to put it in modern times, but actually different because the GOP now is different than even classic conservative views. But he actually had a time where he wanted C.S. Lewis to be on his staff, and he invited
Really?
C.S. Lewis to join him. So Lewis and Churchill were friends, but Lewis declined because he said he was worried what the political statement would say to his evangelistic efforts. So he was worried that having a political affiliation would detract from his Christian views that he was trying to spread to everyone. So he declined Churchill on those grounds, but they were friends. So that's just, I guess, a fun fact about him. But
Well, another fun
I
fact
think
is that
he's based.
he made the peace sign popular. He's the one
I
who
didn't
created
know
this.
that. That's so cool.
Huge. That's so based.
Because this V means victory, and he made that as peace, victory, peace.
That is so cool.
Actually, so many of your picks were by people you didn't know enough about. You just wanted to hear our views on them.
A good amount, yes, a good amount.
Oh, wow.
Well, next we have Sigmund Freud,
Oh boy.
psychologist, very popular. Freudian slips come from Freud, obviously. But we also have the idea of the superego, the ego, and the id. These categorizations of.
You made the ego?
Yes, it all comes from
Oh,
Freud.
that's cool.
Our idea of the subconscious like originates. I think it's properly
Really?
attributed to Freud's work, and his idea on the analysis of dreams, psychoanalyzing dreams. That's also Freud. He wrote an entire book on that. So that's obviously very influential in modern culture. People
Mhm.
always thinking about what their dreams could mean. I mean that goes way back, but like Freud actually formalized a process for possibly interpreting what it could mean. Let's see, Freud, kind of debatable stuff. Kind of a rough childhood. Um, and and especially the whole Oedipus complex thing, like that's he tackled a lot of weird subjects because I mean he dealt with a lot of psychologically damaged people, so that's kind of expected. But I think people generally say he's a great psychologist, and I think if you actually look deeper into it, he's got some weird ideas that nobody calls him out about. So, what do you guys know? Any ideas?
Well, I know that he was really into cocaine, and he also hated the U.S. with a passion.
Interesting.
Oh boy.
Okay.
So, but the fact, I don't know, I really
Hating the US is kind of overrated, honestly, at this point.
it is a little
Everybody
over.
hates the US,
Everyone does it.
so
Yeah, like get your own thing, honestly. Um, the fact he was the first to really like talk about the subconscious, I think that's really, really cool, fascinating.
Yeah, 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 and I think people definitely give him that respect. I think he would be based, maybe. I think I'm leaning based right now.
I'll go
Mm,
based. I don't have
based.
a whole lot of thoughts about him because I don't
Interesting.
have an ego. So,
Oh, okay. That, yeah,
sorry, no,
yeah.
that was bad. We'll go back. I have an ego.
Mm,
Okay, Paxton. Who is this guy?
This is Gary Ridgway, also known as the Green River Killer. He
Which
is a.
we have
I
personal
was gonna get to
understanding.
that. I was gonna get to that.
Jacob,
He got too excited. He got too excited. I could see
Jump
it
the
in his
gun.
eyes. He was so excited to say that.
he needs to jump in.
He was getting antsy in his seat to say that.
All right, continue. I'll shut
So
my mouth.
he is a actually, and like, as far as famous serial killers go, he's not very popular. But in our area, he very much is because he was very close to home, to where we all live. He's from Washington. Uh, he, I believe his killings were in the 90s,
I looked it
I
up. It's
believe,
80s to 90s, like
80s to
all the
90s.
way through.
So it's really so. One thing is, how are we going to scale this? Because with overrated, base, and underrated. So I was thinking, we'll rate him on a serial killer scale. And I'm going to
Hmm.
make the argument that I believe that he is an underrated serial killer. And, like, I don't think he deserves more attention, but I think he was an incredibly smart serial killer that was able to kill for an incredibly long time without being discovered. And he also had a family and was well integrated into the community, and he
Hmm.
was like a well-known figure.
I think what I
And I
read was
find that
48 murders in total.
yeah, 40. Well, actually, he says he's killed 86, but 48 is confirmed.
I see.
So, but anyways, the story that we're connected to is we actually know the people that bought. Well, I don't. Jake knows them more, but the good friends, bought the house after he was found, and obviously they moved out. They bought the house. I've been inside the house.
Whoa,
Pretty cool.
Mhm.
that
Pretty
is
cool.
so
Yeah.
cool. Didn't know
Yeah.
that.
So
Here's
I.
they didn't know who he was though. So they saw this house for sale that was a really good deal and they were moving from California to Washington. And then they bought the house and then not too long after that some news crews came out there and interviewed them when they had no idea and they actually had the police come there and the authorities actually I think they dug up part of their yard. They opened up some of their walls to see if he was hiding any bodies in the walls or in the yard, which they did not find any. But yeah, that was a shock to them
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
they had a
Imagine.
serial killer's house.
Okay. Here's my argument that you can totally disagree with. I'm gonna say he's underrated, not because I think he deserves more attention or he deserves more recognition. I'm gonna say he's underrated because he's a worse serial killer that is not well known at all. So I'm gonna say he's underrated in that fact, not that he deserves any
Like
more.
he should be Ted Bundy level, right?
Basically, yes, he should be talked about more because of the amount of killings he did. But
see.
that's just I'm going underrated.
I could go with Pax. I'll go underrated. Yeah, I've never heard of this guy before.
I think we should make a new tier for him because I'm not comfortable putting him in underrated.
This is a
'Cause
bad
I feel
look.
like that's. I feel like we just need to do
No,
something.
no.
No,
You
'cause-
got outvoted. You
No,
got
no, no,
outvoted.
no, no, no.
You got outvoted.
I'm with Jake. I'm with Jake. Like, imagine someone sees our tier list and recognizes his face, like, and is like, "What is this channel talking about?" Like,
Hold on.
underrated as a serial killer.
Underrated evil. Okay. Just put Bill Nye there, and then we'll call it a day.
That's it. We
All
did
right.
it. We finished. Okay.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for joining.
Bill.
No.
Bill.
We do need to talk about Bill Nye. I can't do that to my guy
Don't do him like that.
who was Bill Nye the science guy. Did you guys ever watch him growing up?
Yeah, I did.
Or
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So I loved his videos as a kid. I still remember some of them, like his enthusiasm. Even just visually, they were cool. There was one where he was showing you like how far the planets were apart in the solar system, and then how far the sun was away, then how far, and he would use it on a scale that we were familiar with, where he started in a classroom and he's like, okay, so this is this far away. And then if I go to this planet, I have to run outside. And then if I go here, I got to like drive down to the supermarket. And he did this whole thing, which is just
Really? Oh,
yeah,
man,
it was
that's
really cool. But just his excitability was great. I think when he started getting like later in life and doing more debates, like the debate against Kim Ham, I did not think was a great debate. But I think he's like, okay, he's not the brightest physicist, scientific mind of our day. He was just a very good educator, especially for kids and getting kids excited about science. So on that side of things, I think he's fantastic. Him getting really involved in kind of looked up as like, the science guy of our time of who we go to. No, I honestly would go to Neil deGrasse Tyson before I would go to Bill Nye. And he's from Seattle, so he's from our area. So he's a local guy. So got to give him some love for that.
Let me
what
jump
are you
in.
guys' thoughts?
Let me jump in. So before Pax's fun facts, I have some that are relevant. He actually graduated with a mechanical engineering degree. He has no formal background with like astrophysics and like higher level physics. So he's just an engineer. Like he's nerdy. Like he might study these equations and maybe do it in his like spare time, but that's not like Jake said, that's not his forte, his expertise even. And also his show was targeted to adults, but kids watched it anyways, and he was kind of frustrated that all the kids are like loving his show when he was actually trying to target adults.
I did not know that.
So that's a fun fact.
I don't have a fun fact, but a lot of rumors I have heard is he's not a very nice guy to meet in person, and he is kind of universally seen as kind of a mean and overbearing guy for all the meet and greets he's done with people. Just kind of rushed, not like actively saying mean comments or anything, but kind of disappointing to meet in person. So that's one thing I would say. I think he had his time, but his time is over. But I also think he knows that too, and I don't see him around at all. So I like him. I think everyone tends to really like him. I think he's either based or maybe slightly overrated.
I would go overrated as well. I feel like it's pretty easy to have someone like he might be pretty replaceable.
Wow, those are some strong words.
That's an interesting argument.
Mm-hmm.
And there you have it.
There it is, the official list
Excellent.
of all characters in history. Right? This is them.
This is the full historic.
This is the list of historical characters.
We didn't miss Jonathan the Turtle, so I don't really know who we would have missed.
I don't think we missed anyone.
Well said.
If you watched to this point, we thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and we will be posting every week. That's it.
All right.
See you later.
Peace out, guys. Love you.
Yeah.